Hello everyone, my name is Claudio Alberto Lozano Correa. This is my exercise 10 from Contemporary World. I will be talking about the end of the World War II and also about the relations that the United States and the Soviet Union had. Well, the most important events and their dates are: in June 6, 1944, the Allies invaded France through Normandy, also known as the D-Day. In August 25, 1944, the Allies liberated Paris. In April 16, 1945, the Soviets reached the city of Berlin and began the last great battle of the war. In April 25, 1945, the Americans and the Soviet troops met on the Elbe River. In April 30, 1945, Hitler committed suicide. In May 2, 1945, Berlin surrendered. In May 7, 1945, Nazi Germany collapsed. In August 6, 1945, the atomic bombing on Hiroshima. In August 9, 1945, the atomic bombing on Nagasaki. In August 15, 1945, Japan was forced to surrender. In June 5, 1945, the Allied leaders signed the Berlin Declaration. In April 4, 1949, the NATO was created. In May 1949, the British, American, and French zones unified into the Federal Republic of Germany. In 1952, the European Coal and Steel Community was created. In 1940, excuse me, in 1955, the last troops retreated from Austria. In 1955, the Communist bloc signed the Warsaw Pact. Now, I will be talking a narration of the end of World War II, and I will explain the bipolarity of the relations between the United States and the Soviet Union. When Nazi Germany started to retreat and abandon some of the conquered territories, in June 4, 1944, the Allies invaded France, driving the Germans out of France and liberating Paris on August 25th. Germany was struck by two fronts: East, Americans, and West, Soviets. On April 16, 1945, the Soviets reached Berlin, and on April 25th, the troops of US and from the Soviets met on the Elbe River, dividing Germany in two. Hitler committed suicide on April 30, and after 2 days, Berlin surrendered. The German forces all around Europe began to surrender, and one by one, and on May 7, Nazi Germany collapsed. While Japan continued to fight for some months until the US dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan was forced to surrender on August 15. When the war was basically over, the main Allied leaders discussed the political future of Europe after the war. They decided that Germany would split in four zones: French, British, American, and Soviet. And in the Potsdam Conference, they established borders for the Allied zones of Germany and Austria. With the pass of time, the zones of the British, French, and Americans standardized their government policies, and in May 1949, they were established as the Federal Republic of Germany. Later, the Soviets established the German Democratic Republic with their zone. The Federal Republic of Germany was influenced by capitalist ideas, while the German Democratic Republic was influenced by the communist ideas. The Soviets had influence over the governments of other countries like Poland, Romania, between others, therefore taking control of the eastern half of Europe. The US noticed and created the Plan Marshall, where they handed over $17 billion to Europe, its reconstruction and a free market economy, capitalist. The countries that were part of it created an anti-Soviet bloc. With the situation being extremely tense, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization (NATO) was established on April 4, 1949, and in 1952, some countries formed the European Coal and Steel Community, that was the precursor of the European Union (EU), creating an anti-communist policy. The Communist bloc responded creating their military alliance with the Warsaw Pact in 1955. The whole world was divided into two gigantic blocs: the capitalists, led by the US, and the communists, led by the Soviet Union. Now, I will explain what is the D-Day and how Nazi Germany collapsed, and what happened between Japan and the United States. The D-Day was in June 6, 1944. About 156,000 Allied troops landed on 5 beaches in Normandy, which is a French region. It required an extensive preparation, because it was one of the largest amphibious military assaults in history. This day is called the beginning of the end of war in Europe. The Germans were trapped by the Soviets on the east and the Americans on the west. Hitler knew that they already had lost in the war, so he committed suicide from days earlier. On April 30, 1945, then 2 days later, Berlin surrendered, and one by one all the German forces in Europe began to surrender, until the day that Nazi Germany collapsed, in May 7, 1945. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, in December 7, 1941, they made the US enter the World War II in the size of the Allies, because Japan was in the Axis 1. When the Nazi Germany collapsed, Japan thought that they could still fight, but USA attacked with atomic bombs Hiroshima in August 6, 1945, and Nagasaki in August 9 of 1945, forcing Japan to surrender to the Allies. Well, in my opinion, I think that the World War II was extremely cruel, violent, and horrible. I don't understand where do people get so much hate to specific minorities, for example the Jews or the homosexuals. I also think that this event is an incredible example of what we should never do again. We can take it as an opportunity to learn that hate and violence never had and will never have a good ending to humanity. In fact, it creates more hate and ideologies that must not exist in today's society. Thank you.